State Fullerton has done it. They've gone from
15 and 16, the champions of college baseball.
Welcome to the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast, talking about the past, present, and future of Cal State Fullerton baseball.
Here's a drive, deep right center. Back there, and Chamberlain has won it. A walk-off homer from the freshman Chamberlain, its first of the year.
Cal State Fullerton has won the College World Series in 1995.
One ball and one strike. Runners lead from second and third. The 1-1 chopped over the mound. The second baseman Borgano's got it. Throws to first, a no-hitter for Colt Neesmith.
Here's your host, Dave Lamb.
Welcome into episode 68 of the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast. Today's guest is arguably one of the best one-and-done players in Titan baseball history, and that's Joe Fraser. Fraser played just 1 year for Cal State Fullerton, that year being 1995, the year the Titans won their third national championship, defeating the University of Southern California 11-5 in the final championship game. The 1995 Titan squad is widely considered the greatest college baseball team of all time, going 57-9 and becoming the first number one seed at Omaha to win the title. In that championship game, Fraser started at second base and went 1 for 4 and scored one run in one of the 11 runs that the Titans put up at Rosenblatt Stadium that day. A junior college transfer, Fraser played the 1995 season and was selected in the 27th round of the MLB Draft by the Minnesota Twins. During his 1 year on Fullerton's campus, he averaged .348, hit 7 home runs, and drove in 46. Let's welcome into the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast, Joe Fraser.
All right, thank you for having me. I appreciate it's a pleasure being here.
Appreciate you coming on and making the time for us. So,
anytime.
Why don't we just start right at the beginning? Born in 1974, you're a Southern California guy. Talk to us about growing up in the 70s and 80s, and then just growing up. And who was Joe Fraser when he started out really young?
I grew up in Lakewood, California. So I basically grew up at the park. They had a great park and rec systems there in Lakewood, and growing up in the 70s and 80s was all about wiffle ball and over the line. Played some caroms and had a huge slip and slide down the hill at Dalval Park. So I think if you could sum up my childhood, it was really doing those things and just really enjoying life, and seems like a lot more carefree back then.
I think I had a conversation with Rick Vanderhook talking about how he's from Lakewood as well, and I think the city of Lakewood, you can't go to any park in Lakewood, especially back in those days, and there not being at least one, if not two, baseball fields. Was that the case for you when you were growing up out there?
Yeah, that was it. I mean, it was even the basketball courts. We had the taped strike zones for wiffle ball, and so it just kind of was part of life there. I don't know if you remember John Herbold, but Herbold, I remember being in Herbold Hustlers in the summer from when I was like 6 years old, and he'd push the tape in from Hank Aaron talking. He'd put 3 pair of baseball pants and slide on the concrete to show us that it could be done. And so, yeah, we spent lots of summers just, thinking, dreaming, being about, trying to be Bobby Gritch or Greg Nettles, and going to 7-Eleven and getting a Slurpee with the little hologram all-star baseball things on the bottom of those Slurpee cups. So I don't feel like there was a summer day that went by without playing or thinking about baseball.
Well, you mentioned Bobby Gritch, and he's a family friend of yours, or what's your connection with Angels Hall of Famer Bobby Gritch?
Yeah, so he went to school with my father. They went to high school. They went to Wilson High School together. So that was kind of growing up, just kind of going to the games and having that connection with my father. That was pretty cool to kind of just at least kind of taste what the big leagues were like and kind of know somebody that was up there, and that was pretty exciting for me.
Well, as you got a little bit older, going to high school, Ocean View High School in Huntington Beach, you're a dual sport athlete playing football and baseball, but it was a neck injury your senior year while playing football that pointed you in the direction of playing baseball. That was a better future for you. Take us a little bit through how that happened and how it essentially became I guess, a blessing in disguise to kind of steer you towards baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I loved football. I loved the physicality of the sport. I loved, the camaraderie and just all of that. Kind of can get your aggressions out and hit people, and it's not against the rules, and that was kind of cool for me. I wasn't really allowed to play football growing up, so I didn't start playing football until like it was my freshman year of high school. So I had a lot of, makeup work to do to understand the game, but just really loved it. Senior year came about, and I was hoping actually to go play college football. So interestingly enough, just, the first couple, I think it was after the first week of the season, I fractured my neck. Obviously not enough to make a life-changing injury, but I did have quite a bit of repair to do to the right side of my body. I lost pretty much all my arm strength, so the baseball stuff that season was it was sort of rebuilding during the fall and spring to be able to even play my senior year baseball. And so I love it. I still love football to this day and wish I could have played longer, but just kind of forced me into really concentrating on what I was trying to do with baseball.
Well, coming out of high school, you chose to go to Golden West College first, but eventually transferred to Santiago Canyon in Orange, where Don Snedden was coaching at the time. Take us through the decision to play JC ball first, and then transferring to Orange to Santiago Canyon College.
Yeah, so I mean, lesson to all the kids out there, and I even tell my own son this. It's just like when you don't take care of your grades properly. It makes a lot your options in terms of Division I baseball a lot fewer. And so, coming out of my senior year, I didn't have the grades that were appropriate probably to get me to a Division I level. And, I had missed a class that I was supposed to take just in terms of the requirements even. So I didn't really have much of a choice, moving forward, and just knew I wanted to continue to play baseball. And, I think still, but at that time, the junior college baseball around in this area was, second to none. I would argue that we could probably compete against some of the Division I colleges at that time. I know definitely at Santa Ana, our team was full of Division I players. And so I think for me, I was a young graduate, so I graduated when I was 17. And so I think it just helped me mature a lot more. I think the move to Santa Ana was really a no-brainer for me to play for arguably, again, one of the better coaches. I feel like I've been blessed with the coaches that I've played for in my baseball career. So moving over to Santa Ana with Don and his knowledge and just he's a legend. So that just was that move really just put me where I needed to be in terms of my baseball IQ and development as a player, and ultimately led me to Cal State Fullerton.
Well, and speaking of Don Snedden, Coach Snedden is one of those guys where you can't tell the story of Cal State Fullerton baseball without talking about Cerritos College, and also you can't tell it without Don Snedden. And Don Snedden didn't really coach at Cal State Fullerton, but he has such a major impact on the program itself. Extrapolate a little bit on that one for me, if you can, and how it impacted not only the program but also you personally as a player.
Yeah, I mean, as well as anybody that's a part of the Titan program, the tight knit, the web, if you will, of players. Obviously that started at Cerritos College, but with players like Don Snedden, who really paved the way for all Cal State Fullerton players. I mean, Don was a first All-American at Cal State Fullerton, an amazing shortstop in his own, and really, playing for Don allowed me to understand the game in a completely different way. The way he motivated, the way that he just knew what pitch was coming. The studying of the game, the mental part of the game. I think all of those things, before I got to Augie, were really solidified, with Coach Snedden and the work that he did there at Santa Ana College. At that time, as Rancho Santiago.
Correct. So how did you end up getting to Cal State Fullerton? So you did your first year at Golden West, transfer over to Santa Ana Santiago, and then you came to Cal State Fullerton for your third year. How did that end up happening? Did you have a number of colleges coming after you, or was Cal State Fullerton the only one, or how did you end up coming to Cal State Fullerton for that 95 season?
I was pretty heavily recruited out of Rancho Santiago, and it really came down to, I kind of wanted to stay home, and I'd looked at Texas A&M, Texas, Florida. So I looked at some schools to kind of move away, but, ultimately wanted to stay here, and the two front runners here were USC, ironically, and Cal State Fullerton. And, obviously Mike Gillespie was an amazing coach as well. I actually had an appointment with them to go visit the school, and they were going to offer me. And, my mom had gone to USC, and so it was just kind of one of those Trojan things. And I got a call from him that said he needed to reschedule my visit over there. And I don't know if it was that day or the very next day, Augie called me and said, "Hey, we'd love you to come down." And the rest is history. I went down and talked to him and signed on the dotted line and said, let's go win a championship.
What was it about Cal State Fullerton or the program or Augie or the whole thing that you didn't even say, "Hey, thanks, but I've got a potential with USC and I want to weigh all my options before signing on that dotted line"? What made you sign so quickly?
You know what? Like, if anybody that's talked to Augie, I mean, he knows what he wants, and I knew what I wanted as well in terms of a baseball program. And when we sat down, just really solidified everything I knew about Cal State Fullerton and the history of the program and all of the great players that have gone through there. And so for me, that was just really intriguing in terms of just getting down to playing like hard-nosed baseball and winning. And that's what I chose to do. And I just, for some reason, when we met and just, Aug's he's got so much charisma and he had, so much personality. I just was like, man, I want to play for this guy. And really that's all it took.
So coming to Fullerton in the fall of 1994, being one of the new guys to join a team that actually went to Omaha in 1994, but unfortunately they went 2-2. Did it feel like when you stepped on campus and you started going through those fall workouts that there was something special here, or did it kind of evolve over time? Or when you first got on campus, what was your impression when you first started working out with the guys?
I think it actually was pretty horrible, to be honest with you. Like I think when in the fall, because there were so many junior college transfers, that we did have some new guys, some freshmen. And I think a lot of times in the fall, until the dust settles and people are competing for positions, it's rough. It's a grind, and it's super competitive. And we had a bunch of competitors on our team, which was in the end why we were so successful. But I think in the fall, it was a rough go, just because we didn't know who was going to be where and what our roles on the team were going to be. And so, I coming in, I knew I needed to compete, and that's all I really had my mind on at that time.
So did you, coming out of that, did you think, oh man, I might not be playing as much as I thought I was going to be during my recruiting trip, or, whatever you had in your mind? Did you have second thoughts, or was it just, hey, I just got to grind through spring and get myself a job?
Yeah, I think it was more, I didn't really have any, I was pretty confident in my abilities and that I could help the team win. I think it was more of just that team element wasn't there. The cohesiveness wasn't there in the fall. And then I think, like I said, once the dust settled, that's when it all came together. You had a bunch of guys that really understood their role, and we were all a bunch of competitors, even the guys on the bench. And so I think that's why it worked so well. But like I said, in the fall, I just knew I needed to perform. And I was pretty confident in my ability and knew I had experience in coming in, and I figured work my butt off and the chips would fall where they would fall.
So coming back from the winter break and starting spring practices, getting ready for that season opener against Stanford, Was the team coming together then, or was it an evolution through the season?
I think it was a pretty, we clicked pretty quickly once the season started. I mean, I think, opening with Stanford is always, a tough go, and I think they were ranked, I don't know if they were ranked number 1 at that time, but we pretty much handled them. And from there on out, it was like, oh, man, if we, who's next? And I think that was our mentality pretty much the whole way through. Was just one game at a time, and okay, when that one was done, then we just said, who's next?
Well, you said that you weren't familiar with or didn't remember if what their ranking was for Stanford. What was Fullerton's preseason ranking? Do you remember what that was going into that season? Actually,
I really don't. No. I don't know if we were even ranked, to be honest with you. Maybe because of the year before, but I don't remember that. I don't recall.
So the losing streak, which has become the losing streak of 3, right? That's kind of incredible to have a losing streak, and you only had 9 losses, and the losing streak is identified as a 3-game losing streak. But the losing streak that started in Wichita State, and then the following game against Nevada. We've heard the Augie Garrido impression of the now famous D.C. Olson speech. And
so I said, D.C., I've told these guys everything I know about what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and it's doing no good. We're still all uptight. You say something. Well, man, we just got to play ball. This is stupid. Well, man, we just got to play ball. This is stupid. So the famous D.C. Olson speech that just went on like that. And they did it. And he said, we're better than these guys. This is stupid. And it was just, that kind of stuff. And they didn't lose a game after that. They won 18 games in a row after that.
So as a player, what was your perspective when, after you guys lost that 3rd game to Nevada and then the D.C. Olson speech or whatever it was, kind of give us your point of view, because we've already heard Augie's. What was yours?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I fouled a ball off my foot in Arizona, so I was actually out all 3 of those games. I always tease the guys that's why we lost 3, but I don't think that was the reason. But anyways, I didn't play in Wichita, and I didn't play. I don't know if I didn't play 1 game in Nevada, but I remember coming back in Nevada. But yeah, I think it was just a matter of we really didn't know what was going on. We needed some leadership at that time, and Deese being the leader that he was, just stepped up and was like, hey, let's go, we got to move. And we really responded, between he and Augie, the team really responded to wake up and start winning some more games.
Rewind back to that Stanford season, or even before that, was it pretty well established that D.C. Olson, since he was kind of the gray beard of the team and had been through the wars, was a freshman on that 1992 team that lost to Pepperdine in the College World Series final? Was he kind of the captain or the de facto leader just because he was so old, or just because he played the game right, or what made DC DC?
I think Deese just went about his business. I think he led by example. And so I think when you're a younger player, or you've had somebody that's been in the program, he didn't act any different, other than he just modeled the behavior that he thought he would want to see from everyone else: hustling, getting his work done, always competing, And so for me, that's the kind of leader DC was for me. I always knew that Deese was going to pick me up. So if I something faltered with me, I knew DC would be either in front or behind me to do what he needs to do. If I, made a bad throw, he was going to pick me up. And so, for me, that's the kind of leader DC was. He just put people on his back and said, hey, follow me.
Well, talking about that 3-game losing streak that essentially was the last loss that you guys would experience for the rest of that year. In hindsight, the 95 team would never lose another game that season, winning the last 7 straight regular season games, sweeping the Big West Conference tournament, sweeping through the South Regional in Baton Rouge, and, of course, sweeping through Omaha. What clicked for the team to be so dominant that they could go on that kind of a run?
I think having everybody buy into understanding their role and what they needed to do for the team. And once you have that mentality, I think the confidence just continues to build. We had guys that went out and threw strikes on a nightly basis. We had guys that stole bases. We had guys that hit home runs. We had guys that, moved runners over. And so when you play each facet of the game as flawlessly as we did, it's really tough to lose baseball games.
So leading up to that winner-take-all game versus USC, Cal State Fullerton beat Stanford 6-5, which was actually the lowest run total in Omaha for the Titans. You'd go on to score 11 runs in the next 3 games, twice against Tennessee, and then, of course, the 11-5 drubbing of the Trojans in the final game. If your memory is good enough, take us through those 3 games leading into the championship. So starting with Stanford and then the 2 with Tennessee.
Man, you are really testing my memory. I think we'd played Stanford already, so we kind of knew what we were going to get, right? And I think, getting that first win was key. I think after Stanford, I just didn't feel like we were going to lose. Tennessee had some decent arms, but again, when you play at that time, when you were playing West Coast baseball, there wasn't anything that you hadn't seen already. And the SEC is a different beast now. I mean, it wasn't like, oh gosh, we're facing Tennessee, So I think getting that first victory versus Stanford, which we'd already played them, I think that really solidified for me that we just weren't going to lose.
So for those that were watching on CBS, Michelle Tafoya, who everybody knows as being one of the sideline reporters, and she's had a very good broadcasting career, but she was pretty young in her broadcasting career, and she was the sideline reporter for that 1995 championship game that was broadcast on CBS. So she said on her on-field pregame report that you had a bad practice the day prior.
Now, on the other hand, Fullerton coach Augie Garrido told me that his team had a bad practice yesterday because they were tense, which is really uncharacteristic of this team. So in order to get loosened up today on the bus, they decided to blare some music on the way over. That included the Rolling Stones' Honky Tonk Women. They want to follow up a bad practice with a good, loose game. Starting lineups, we'll be back with that right after this.
Give us the genesis of how the Rolling Stones' Honky Tonk Women became the song for the 1995 team in Omaha.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I don't even know if I'd ever listened to the Rolling Stones before that day. So for me, it just came on, and we all just kind of were like vibing, and ended up coming out and just pounding on USC. So like for us, it was just like that. Yeah, that was it. That's the theme song, which was pretty cool. I think Rolling Stones played during our infield and outfield all year long. Again, I wasn't a big Stones fan at that time. Like I was just like super into country for whatever reason, and I wasn't. So all the Stones fans out there, don't hate me, but I think it was one of that and like Green Day. I remember a couple songs like for infield, outfield. So maybe that's how it came about, like on the bus. But yeah, we did have a pretty cruddy practice, and we just weren't crisp, and Augie was not happy, and I'm sure we were all tight and a little nervous about the game, but oddly enough, we pumped some music on the bus, and as soon as we stepped off that bus, everything went away, and we just knew we needed to take care of business.
So I think it was after one of the Cal State Fullerton alumni game. A few adult beverages were consumed at one of the local watering holes up there near campus, and I bumped into D.C. Olson, and I asked him about that. Now, he said that the genesis came from winning the Baton Rouge Regional in Baton Rouge. And apparently there was a bus ride down to Bourbon Street.
That there was.
Okay. And I don't know if the statute of limitations have run out. I'm assuming so. It's been a good 20, maybe even 30 years has passed. But can you give us any kind of details? Because I was told, and I don't know if DC was just feeding me a story to get me away from him. But there was something where there was a live band, and then there were people on tables, and then somebody grabbed a microphone, or maybe that memory for you is a little bit hazy just because of the party atmosphere. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I do remember going to Bourbon Street. I do remember going through, and I think we took over every bar on Bourbon Street as the Titans. And I do remember lots of live music, but I don't remember much other than that, than having a really good time, because we just, we'd gone into a pretty hostile, playing environment and really just ran the table on people. I don't think LSU knew what to do with themselves.
Well, and looking back at that regional, you didn't even play LSU. They got bounced out of their own regional.
That's true. That is very true. And, but their fans were still there. I remember their fans not being too kind of people. But, yeah, I just think we just stormed in there and made it our home field. I mean, that's kind of what we did everywhere we went, oddly enough,
Well, that championship game, Ted Silva gets the start. Mark Kotsay blasts 2 home runs. Tony Miranda, C.J. Ankrum, Jeremy Giambi, and, of course, Kotsay had multiple hits in that game. The only guys to appear in the box score without getting on base was Steve Chatterman, who was he was a freshman who came in on defense once Kotsay moved to the mound. So take us through the championship game, and was there ever a point in the game when you guys were worried?
Man, I don't think so. I don't remember being worried at all. I mean, you knew what you were going to get with Ted. He was going to throw strikes. He was going to compete. He was one of the best competitors I've ever played with. And, at that time, Mark was just out of his mind hitting home runs. And so, we just knew, I knew I needed to play good defense and get on base, and then the rest of the guys would take care of what they were doing. And so I didn't ever feel, I thought actually, for me, I thought USC was probably our weakest opponent, and like I said, we played them during the season as well. So it was kind of weird. You go all the way to Omaha and you play teams that, kind of were in your backyard before, but that was West Coast baseball back then, So yeah, no, I don't think there was any time where I was concerned about losing to the USC.
So from your perspective, what was it like? Kotsay throws that pitch, it's a pop-up, Miranda catches it, and then all hell breaks loose. What was your recollection or your perspective of that whole thing?
Well, I mean, it just was all surreal, to be honest with you. I mean, to start where we started in the fall, sort of just to kind of take it back full circle of how I felt in the fall. I mean, I'm not sure how the other guys felt, but to me in the fall, it just felt so disjointed and non-team environment. And then full circle to a pop up to left field and just closing in on what you said, arguably the best college team ever is really special. Those things don't leave you, and the memories and the guys. And so for me, it was just about how high I could jump onto the pile at the end of the whole thing and celebrate with a bunch of dudes that we spent a lot of time together, a lot of sweat and tears and blood and moments, throughout the year of just being by each other's side. So you can't have a better way to cap that off.
And for those that don't know, or they've seen the pictures or the video on replays, Augie was on a scooter because he had injured his, I believe it was his right.
Yeah.
He had an injury.
Yeah, he was trying to play pepper with us, and I think he just popped his Achilles. I think we might have been in San Jose or something. I mean, I know it was kind of early on in the season, so he was in that scooter most of the year. So we told him he just stick to managing and not playing pepper.
So the reporters had to kind of bend down and put a microphone in his face because he was sitting down on that scooter the entire time, and they kind of had to wheel him out there to the field and all that. I don't think he had to make too many mound visits on that thing, or what was the story with Aug in the scooter?
Well, I mean, in typical Aug fashion, he had the state-of-the-art, scooter. I think at that time those things were pretty. Not many people had them, so it was an interesting color. I think he had it was like maroon or chartreuse or something. So it was it was kind of a funny little thing, but it got him where he needed to be, and it didn't matter honestly if he was standing up or sitting down. I mean, again, arguably probably the best college coach ever. And we were all just super blessed to be able to play for him. I mean, you do whatever he asked. You might not agree with it, but for some reason, however he asked you to do it, you did it, because it was for him. That's very. I mean, I remember. I think we were in San Jose. I think he came over and told me, I don't think you're going to be able to play second base for me. So I asked him why. He said, well, you don't turn the double play right. And so we had a conversation about how I had led, Santa Ana and the whole county and state rather in double plays turn. And I said, well, I'm 6'1", 210 pounds. I think I can't turn a double play like somebody that's 5'7" and 180. And he just said, well, can you just try it this way? And so, I think it goes back to just like, hey, didn't matter what he asked of us. He just had that way about him. And I think that's the sign of a great leader. And that's why we were able to accomplish what we accomplished.
So you win the national championship. You return home as national champions to Fullerton with a big celebration at Goodwin Field. That team would go on and meet President Bill Clinton at the White House. In reading in Hank Tran's book, the 1995, Remember the 57 and 9 Titans, there's an anecdote about your tie that you wore to the White House. Can you care to expand on that?
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, it was a Tommy Hilfiger tie, and at that time it was like, I don't know, apparently good enough that the President of the United States wanted to. It was a baseball tie, so it had like little baseball players on it. My grandma had gotten it for me. It was kind of a good luck tie, and so when we got and I met President Clinton, he asked if he said, "Oh, I love that tie. Do you want to trade?" In hindsight, I guess I'm a little crazy, but I told him no. I told him, "No, my grandma got me this tie. It means a lot. It means a lot to me." and he laughed, probably because his tie was worth $1,000. But I didn't end up trading ties with Bill Clinton. So I still have the tie my grandma got me. I don't wear it, but I have it.
That was going to be my next question, but thank you for answering it. I was going to ask you if you still had that tie.
I still have that tie. I sure do.
Well, your 1 year at Cal State Fullerton, probably, well, they say that it's arguably the greatest compilation, or it's the greatest college baseball team to have ever played. So not bad. Your 1 year at Cal State Fullerton results in you getting drafted by the Minnesota Twins. You choose to go pro within 2 years you advanced to Double-A, which was New Britain Rock Cats for the Twins organization. So you played professionally from 95 till 1999. Take us through your professional career before we get into what you're doing right now.
I think as a kid, I'd always dreamed of being in the big leagues. And so for me to be able to get that opportunity was just a dream come true. And I made my way. I battled with a lot of injuries. I broke my hand. I had 3 wrist surgeries. And so, I think when you're playing the minor leagues, it's a grind. It's a lot of games. There's a lot of bus travel. But I met some amazing people along the way. Like, when you play with Torrey Hunter and David Ortiz and Corey Koski and Doug Minkiewicz and AJ Przinsky. I mean, you go down the list. I think I might have been one of 2 guys that didn't make the big leagues off that Double-A roster. Played for some great coaches, John Russell, Al Newman. Man, those are life experiences that I would never take back, and that honestly, like for me in my life today, I use baseball all the time. I use stuff I learned from Coach Sneddon. I use the wisdom of Augie Garrido and George Horton and Rick Vanderhook, and so for me, like it really kind of shaped who I am. Like when you stop playing, you don't really understand. Like like when you get released, and like it was like weird. I had my best spring training ever. I got called in probably 3 days before we broke for spring training. I was given a plane ticket and said, your plane leaves in an hour and a half. And so those moments are like crushing, right? Like you don't really understand the magnitude, but the game is so rewarding in so many different ways. Like if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it again. chase that dream and have those experiences. And so, I was very blessed to play with the Twins organization, an amazing organization. I mean, it's the reason all of these experiences are the reason I am who I am today.
Well, speaking of that, in your current position, you're the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Director of Classified Personnel for the Los Alamitos Unified School District. Professionally, how did you get from playing professional baseball to where you are in your career now?
Oh, man. Well, if you had asked me any time in my earlier career if I would be in education, I would have told you you're crazy. But I finished playing baseball. A lot of my family are teachers, and so I didn't know what I was going to do. Like so many minor leaguers, so many ex-pro balls as players, it's like, well, what do you do? Like if you spent your whole life doing this one thing. My mom was like, why don't you try teaching? And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. And then I needed a job. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try teaching. I substitute taught, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, And then I got a teaching position in Paramount. And I was like, well, I actually really like this. I like being around the kids, keeps me young. And then just sort of steadily made my way up. A lot of teachers sent me their kids that didn't behave properly. I seemed to have a really good rapport with those kids. And I was like, well, I might as well do administration. I'm kind of doing that now anyways. And so got into administration, was an assistant principal. I ironically got my doctorate from USC. Currently, again, I'm an assistant superintendent in human resources in Los Alamitos. And so come a long way, let's just say that, in terms of education and understanding what it takes to get things done in the classroom. And really, I think for me, being in education, I really wanted to give kids great experiences when they go to school. Like I didn't always feel, I always had baseball, right? And football in high school, and that's why I went to school. And so I wanted to be able to give kids other experiences, not just athletics, but, activities, the arts, a little bit of everything. And so I wanted to make their experiences in school, K-12 education, really great. And that's why I do what I do.
Well, I was told, and I'm not 100% sure, so who knows, we might have to edit this part out. But apparently your son is quite the ball player himself. Tell us a little bit more about that, and then also tie it in with your experience as a ball player, because one of the keystones of Titan baseball was, Augie and George Horton and Rick Vanderhook and Dave Serrano and all of those types were able to kind of unearth that hidden gem where he was undersized or overlooked or whatever it is. But nowadays, with Perfect Game and the area codes and showcases galore and travel ball and all that kind of stuff, it's really, really hard to find that lowly recruited or under-recruited hidden gem out there. So tell us a little bit more about your son, and apparently he's a pretty good ball player, but then also how has being discovered and being recruited changed from what you went through to what you're experiencing now with today's modern baseball player?
Gabe is a very good baseball player. He's a lot more talented than I was, and he's super hard worker, and the kids have a lot of resources, so they should be better than we were when we played. And I think that's right. That's how we just continue to grow the game and make it better. And there's obviously a lot of argument of whether or not it's better or not. He's a really talented player with lots of tools, and I think to what you're saying in terms of the recruiting process, it's just there's so much information out there for everyone, right? Like for coaches, for players, for parents. It makes it easier and more difficult all in the same token. It's you've got kids committing it as 8th graders, which I think lends itself to another set of issues. But then also you have the ability to get yourself exposed to colleges that would never have seen you. Like, when I played, I just happened to know some people that lived in Texas, and so I went out and played a tournament out there. But now kids are going, you don't even have to play a tournament out there. Now you just send your video, and that's really, my son, he's verbally committed to play at Arkansas. but that's how that goes. Like, it just, it's kind of nuts, and scary, and, you know, and so I feel for parents. You know, it's really hard with, you know, trying to figure out whether you're going to do a showcase or play in this tournament. And by the time you get done spending money on all these things, you could have paid for a top-notch university. You know, it's fun to watch Gabe play. I mean, now I really didn't get into coaching. I enjoy the game. I love watching the game. I love helping kids out. Like, one of my favorite things to do is call on behalf of a player, of the people that I know, you know, and all of those people that you mentioned before they were so instrumental in helping Gabe, my own son. You know, all I had to do was make a call, and, you know, George Horton, Rick Vanderhook, Dave Serrano was instrumental in helping Gabe really, you know, get seen or get heard about. And then, you know, you have to do the work yourself. Then you have to perform, right? So all the hype is the hype, and then you actually have to do the work and perform. And so, you know, Gabe's done that, and I'm really excited for him. He just started his junior year. He's at Orange Lutheran High School, playing shortstop there. And so, you know, I think for him, it's just got to be, you know, just keep it in front of you, right? There's one step at a time, and it's not too far in the future. Just keep every day and win every practice. I think that's how we were so successful as Titans through the history of the program, is that you go out every day and you get better. And you don't worry about the things that are going to be in the future. You just get better at baseball, and you keep developing, and you keep getting better. And all the winning will take care of itself. And so those are the cool things that I get to try to pass on to him, although I feel like I get a lot of eye rolls, so I take them to other people.
Well, and on this one that we were mentioning before we hit the record button that you know, you're pretty active on Twitter and follow the team pretty closely. But when it comes to the outlook for the Titan team upcoming, do you have any thoughts on what's going on? Obviously, the program in the past few years has kind of stumbled and struggled, especially with comparison to the tradition that it's enjoyed over the years. You know, any thoughts on the upcoming team and what we can hopefully look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the program is heading back in the right direction. I mean, if you look at all college baseball, you know, things are pretty cyclical, and so I think in today's recruiting, you know, to have the new facility, and I think we have the right coaches in place, and obviously the past coaches have built legacy. So I mean, I really look forward to watching a ton of games this year. I think they've got a solid group. I really like Maddox Lotta. I like his stick. I like, you know, they look more physical. I think the team just in general looks more physical than they have the past few years. And, you know, if you're going to battle, you know, some of these programs that have these ginormous weight rooms and $30 million facilities, that's the stuff you just got to keep on top of. But, you know, I think, for me, for the future of the program, I think the program has enough history that we're gonna be able to survive the sort of influx of California kids leaving the state. And if we just get back to playing fundamental baseball and working hard, I think, you know, I'm excited for this year for the Titans, and moving forward for Dietz and Bilo and Neil over there in you know, leading the way. So I wish them the best of luck. We'll be there rooting for them, and I think they're going to have a successful season.
Well, I'll probably end it with that, but I found it awfully, not necessarily ironic. I don't think the word is ironic, but I found it awfully coincidental that the one name that you dropped on the current team happens to be a second baseman from a JC.
Second baseman from a JC, and he wears number 6. So I love it.
So there you go. I mean, there's the trifecta right there.
Right? I mean, come on.
Thanks for listening to the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast. Feel free to visit our website, calstateomaha.com. While there, you can order an official Cal State Omaha t-shirt from the merch store. Follow the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Cal State Omaha. Please like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cal State Omaha. The 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast is an On the Lam Enterprises production. It is not affiliated with Cal State Fullerton or Titan Baseball.